Hello all, my name is Erta the Wanderer, and I've come out of the jungle today to talk once again with one of our most esteemed generals, the Great Lizard Wizard. How are we doing today, Wizard?
I'm doing great. It is really smoky here, but otherwise, I'm doing great.
Yep, so apologies if things are a bit rough. The weather in both of our locations is fairly punishing. But so today we're going to be answering a few questions from viewers. We're going to be going over a recent conflict that our Great Wizard has been a part of, and we're going to see just about what practical application can happen in the current competitive meta. So let's tell us about that, Wizard. What have you seen?
Yeah, so geez, smoke. It's already getting me. Last Sunday, I went to the Dragon Parlor, which is a game store in Spokane. They held their first Age of Sigmar RTT for third edition. Put on by Jace, who's a wonderful guy. He organizes a lot of events in the area. And I think it was 24 people signed up, and then only 23 made it, and then only 22 played. So it wasn't a huge RTT, but still a decent sized RTT. Um, and yeah, it was just a great event. It was 3 rounds. Oh geez, I gotta actually open up my battle plans in order to remember which ones we played. We played Veins of Gur first, which is basically Star Strike. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, it is Star Strike. It's just reworked. And that one was against a Archeon Slaves to Darkness player. I was lucky in that there was another person who went undefeated, but I ended up winning the event because of schedule. Everyone that I played against went 2-1. So I ended up with some really fun, great opponents.
Okay.
And then second game was Tooth and Nail, which is that weird jagged deployment.
Yeah, I
Um,
that's actually the last game I played as well,
yeah, I really liked Tooth and Nail a lot. It's the no reserves. It's basically the old total commitment.
except
Um,
not as crap deployment, so that the slower armies are better at getting in there.
exactly. And then the objectives fully in your territory that like aren't on the edge, those ones are prime objectives, so you can't get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one that I played was the remake of Scorched Earth. What was it called? I should have checked this beforehand.
Oh well, I'm sure they'll forgive us.
But it's the six objectives. Oh, I think it's from the core rulebook. Um, Instead of from the GHB. Uh, but it's oh no, it's Feral Foray, which is it's Scorched Earth. But it's been reworked and it's hot dog style again instead of being hamburger style like the very first one. And it's only six objectives because smaller table instead of eight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but those are the three ones that I played. Second round, I played against a zombie and Graveguard spam Soulblight Gravelords. Um,
Scary
and
zombies.
Yep. And the last game was against Sons of Behemoth.
Oh,
And that game was absolutely amazing. I loved it. Sons of Behemoth are so good in the new edition. I'm so happy to see how good they are.
yeah,
Um, like dealing 35 damage in a turn is actually a chore now. It's not just a given.
right.
Um, there's so many ways you can do things to mitigate damage through like finest hour and all out defense and like there's just they're so much more durable and
They aren't
it's
the
a smaller
yeah,
table, fewer objectives.
they aren't the
uh
massive not glass, mostly glass not cannons they once were.
exactly, like now they punch pretty hard, and they're pretty durable. Like the Giants player that I played, uh like straight raffle stomped an Iron Jaws list.
Oh dear.
Like it was over for him like by the end of the second term. Um, and then I think he played like a new Stormcast list at the for his first round. Um, the Giants player is one of my best friends. So it was super fun playing him. I'm always happy when we get to play each other, and it was a fantastic game.
Exactly.
Um, but what I ended up bringing to the event, because I was just kind of curious, like, how did the new edition shift things? So I just brought a modified version of like the standard double slam list. So the old list that I used to play was Croak, Aslan, and Astrolith, 2 units of 10 Sarsguard, 2 units of 10 Skinks, 2 units of maxed out Salamanders, and two 5-man units of chameleon skinks with Geminids and Bellwind. For the new edition, I just nerfed that down and I took two regular slams instead of Croak. Um, and then I had two 5-man units of Sarsgaard. Obviously, I took prize sorcery for my grand strategy.
Hmm.
Um, and then I ran two 5-man units of Sarsgaard, had the Sars Ashlyth Bearer, two regular Skink Priests, um, three maxed out units for the new edition of Salamanders, so two Salamanders each, a 10-man unit of Skinks, and a 5-man unit of Chameleon Skinks, no endless spells, just to see how that would fare in the new edition. Um, and it is a lot less damage because the old magic phase with Croak used to get you like 20 damage or more in my experience.
Mm. Right.
Just between like Stellar Tempest and uh, Celestial Deliverance and Comet's Call from the other guy. And like, I don't know, it just, you did so much more damage with your spells and Geminids in the old edition. Um, so this is definitely way less damage. Salamanders are way more durable though. Like a four
Really?
up where it's so easy to all out defense to get to a three up.
Granted.
Um, and you put them in cover to help you soften some of that rend. So you're at a two up, which best case scenario ends up sticking at a three up. But like they're just so much more durable, and there's so much less damage in general that those 2-man units of salamanders stick around a lot longer than I thought they would.
Yeah,
Um,
that is what I've been experiencing as well. Everything like we used to say to everybody, things will die, get used to it.
yep,
Because that was something that people needed to learn in second edition. Everything was just going to explode. But
yep,
in the new edition, I've gone 3 full combat with monsters and
mhm,
they've stuck around, which was
yeah,
unheard of
yeah.
in second edition. It
Like
just
that.
never
That
happened.
being said, I killed Archaon over 2 turns. I killed everything else in his army, and then I went and killed Archaon. Um, because everything else was much more killable.
That's definitely how
Um,
you do it. Archeon
exactly.
is dangerous, but he's also big, he's also fat, and he's one dude. Who
Yeah,
counts
exactly.
as 5 dudes
Exactly.
now, but still just 5 dudes.
Yep. And that one was the Star Strike one, the Veins of Gur. Um, so there wasn't really a need to not play it slow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like turn one, I basically threw out some spell damage and completed my strategy for the turn, and then passed the turn. And then he did the same, and then I got the double turn, and then I went and actually dealt some real damage to his army. Like that's when I actually deployed my salamanders. I held on to my chameleons because it's Star Strike. You want something in reserve for round three.
Right.
Um, and then I
Especially something that can just drop anywhere.
exactly. Um, but I ended up double turning him uh on that turn two, and I killed like 2/3 of his army off of that double turn when I actually brought on my salamanders.
Mm-hmm.
Enslaves to Darkness isn't non-durable. Like I was shocked at how much damage I was able to get through on Chaos Warriors, like who have that 5-up save against mortal wounds, who
Right.
have a 4-up save re-rolling. Um,
Was it a dice thing, or do you expect this to be normal?
no, like I was with two salamanders sticking like 6 to 7 damage, which is within expectation. It just killed through a lot more than I had put together and was expecting.
Mm.
Um, like between the shoot. So here is the one thing. A lot of times in the other edition, I found that I did not bother charging with salamanders unless my dice whiffed, and then I needed to get them in.
Mm-hmm.
In this edition, I pretty much always sent them in because you need to really make up for the amount of damage that they've lost in other areas.
Right. So they're
Like
much more switch hitters over artillery now.
exactly, yeah. Um, and I also think like having done that and played it and seen the way it worked out, and because of point changes, I can see myself running Razor Dons again too.
Really?
Um, for that same reason. Like you put a Star Priest staff buff on them and you use them as switch hitters, and you can get a decent amount of value out of Razor Dons
They're
as
what,
well.
100 points for one now?
I think they're less. Let me go to. Oh, I don't have my booklet here.
I do. Give me a second. Keep talking.
I, I want to say that they were like 95. Like I think it's like 90 or 95. So they didn't go up nearly as much. Whereas like all of our other good stuff basically went up
Yep, they're
30%, 20
95.
to 30. They're 95.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it made me think that because they're so much easier to fit, like 190 points, uh, way easier to fit than the like 240 for the salamanders. Like I can see myself running Razordons again. Like I don't think I would build a Dracothian's Tell around Razordons. I mean,
Right.
maybe I would because they're going to be just as durable as salamanders. And you're going to be seeing more like the hordes that we see now are going to be more like zombies, Skaven. They're going to be
Really
those
light
hordes
armored
that
stuff.
Razordons are really good at dealing with. So I can see Razordons regaining some prominence in the meta.
Well, the
Um,
big problem they always had was they were priced comparatively with a unit that was incredibly much better than them.
yeah, whereas currently salamanders are sitting at like 30% more expensive, and they do
Just
like
about, yeah.
30% more damage. Um, so because they're a longer range, like it's much harder to screen 16 inches than 12.
Yes.
um, because they actually benefit from buffs that we can give them more readily. Like the Skink Priest were amazing. Like spending a command point from a Skink Priest on Salamanders, always worth it. Getting a prayer off on your Salamanders so they can run and charge and shoot, since I was using them as switch hitters, even better. But like in Fangs of Sotek, if I'm not running Dracothian's Tell, like I can see myself preferring Razordons over Salamanders for Fangs of Sotek if I'm already going to be under the table and I'm already going to have the units that are best at buffing them in my army.
Hmm.
I think I'd probably choose Razordons over Salamanders because
Okay.
they're already going to synergize if I choose to synergize with them.
Right.
And if I don't, they're still fine.
Hmm.
Um,
Like, it's not something you're going to primarily focus on. It's not like you're building a list around them like we do with Stegodons, but
exactly. Yeah.
they feel now actually can work, which they've always
Yeah.
had a
Yeah.
problem with.
And like they were fine. Like they were worth their 80 points in the old edition.
Eh.
The problem is that our book had so many better things. It
Right.
wasn't that they were bad, it's that salamanders were just better.
I'm going to firmly
And
stick
now
in
they're
the
much
camp that
closer
they
to
were
equal.
bad, but
I mean, 2d6 shots, fours and threes, rend 1 damage. Like, I mean, it's only
I
rend
mean,
1 at six
it
inches,
can.
but
Yes,
for
that's the
Fangs of
problem.
Sotek, it's pretty easy to accomplish.
They spiked
Um,
high, but even with Rend, they didn't do all that much in back when damage was really high.
yep.
Now
Well,
that
and
now that the damage ceiling has dropped, they
uh-huh.
actually do comparatively okay damage.
Well, and some of the hordes that we used to see back in the day were just uniquely difficult for Razordons to deal with. Like Mortek Guard, not doing anything.
Venus
Uh,
Guard, old Fire Slayers,
yep.
and
Hearth Guard.
yep,
Uh, yep.
anything that
But
had a ward save of any kind or
yep.
anything that had saves better than 4.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, and like even against some of the other demons, like um Plague Bearers, that -2 to hit pretty much made Razordons worthless.
right.
Um, but
It,
now it's only -1, and you
yeah,
can cancel that out.
they fall under the struggle that all random attack units have, which they
Yeah,
can do very, very well, or you can whiff entirely with them. They do well in melee, which is always the part that people were interested in. But yeah,
yeah, like as a switch hitter, they're really great. So I don't know, like
yeah.
that was something that I learned, like thinking through things. Like I was never gonna summon a Razordon instead of summoning a Salamander because side by
Salamanders are more
side, salamanders are
versatile.
still better. Well, and they're still better. They just cost more, but they don't cost more summoning. Hopefully that stays the same.
Yep,
Um,
we'll see.
yeah, we'll see. Uh, so yeah, like that was some of the major takeaways that I got. Um, so much of the way I used to play relied on my magic phase. It was really interesting not being able to depend on that.
Mm,
I didn't find that not having the endless spells was a big deal though, because I was giving up a spell a turn for each of my slams. So they're basically level 2 casters. And I'm casting Comet's Call for sure on one of them. And I was casting Celestial Equilibrium on one of them. So then that normally left like Stellar Tempest and Arcane Bolt. Stellar Tempest, and Mystic Unforging. I used Mystic Unforging in every one of my games, and I broke 3 artifacts over the course of the tournament.
Yes,
I really like it.
like in general, the reason it's better than it was because Arcane Bolt took the hit.
Yeah,
Having
well,
1, 2, 3
and
damage is really good now.
there's so many more artifacts.
Right.
Like a lot of people are taking Entourage and Warlord to get 3 artifacts.
Right,
Or they're
because
taking,
the
yeah,
general artifacts are actually good.
yes.
Hey,
Well, and you
GW, we
want to
told you
get
this when you
rid,
got rid of the old ones.
you want to get rid of Amulet of Destiny.
Yes.
Uh, like so in the game against the Giants, I in a single turn killed a Kraken Eater.
Hmm.
Um, I took all my salamanders, and I had already. It was on a second turn. I got the turn price. He made me go first, which was correct, because of the way he deployed, and I just sort of got my get 2 units in his deployment zone, battle tactic, and then passed turn. Um, and then he now kind of had to spread out some, because he couldn't afford to just stand back. And so he did his spread out a bit. And from where I had damage stick on my turn from my previous magic phase and then my follow up magic phase, I think I took off like 5 damage over those 2 magic phases from his Kraken Eater. And I was able to get the other 30 damage through between like uh, 6 salamanders and charging with those same salamanders and fighting with the salamanders. And at one point, I think I got like 9 mortal wounds from a set of 2 salamanders, like way more damage than they should have done.
Uh huh.
Um,
It happens.
yeah, it just it happens. And
D3s will do
then
that.
I killed his little giants, like his man eater or man crusher gargants, and that was it. Didn't kill his war stompa, didn't kill his gate crusher. Um, and I tried repeatedly to break that amulet of destiny on his gate crasher, and I just couldn't get it to happen. So I just ignored him. Like, I'll just go for the objectives and the strategies.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, in
I
in
had,
general,
yeah,
the
and I had several structural advantages in that game. That was one of the few tables that had terrain, like 5 pieces of terrain that was over 4 inches tall, so
hmm.
we couldn't long strider it,
Oh,
which is
okay.
not super common for Age of Sigmar.
No.
Um, it definitely happens with the new Warcry stuff, because a lot of that's designed to be two-storied, and a lot of people build it that way. And so that definitely happens with the new Warcry stuff. Uh, but yeah, it was a lot of just custom terrain stuff from older editions. And so there were like 5 pieces that were over 4 inches tall, and that helped me a lot because I was able to play around terrain. And it was Feral Foray, where you could burn objectives. And because he only has 4 units, and I have more than that, like I had those 2 big structural advantages. So I just kind of used those advantages to keep building up incremental gains. And even then, I think I only won by like 5 victory points.
Oof.
And he killed like, I don't know, 1,300 points of my army. Um,
Yeah,
like I
that's
had I had two. Oh, it wasn't quite that much because I
big
had two
boys.
slams, a priest, chameleons, and 1 full unit of salamanders left. But he killed everything else. Oh, and I think I had like 6 skinks because somehow they survived War Stompa when they had no right to. Um,
I find that skinks are just incredibly stubborn in general. It might be the superstitious gamer in me, but I've had 10 mans survive immense threats repeatedly. So
well,
whenever I
so
need
he,
someone in the way, I drop them and they usually work for me.
yeah, I mean, I got like he whiffed his attacks. Like I think he rolled a stupid amount of ones.
Hmm.
And so he only ended up sticking like 3 wounds to me. And then I made 2 6-up saves. Um,
Oh, man. But
yeah.
yeah,
So like
like I
I
said,
had,
it's superstition, but skinks are amazing.
yeah. And like those
Hold
skinks
the
didn't end up winning me
line.
the game. Like they were still present and annoying, which is great. That's huge.
That's what they do.
Uh but like it wasn't one of those games where it came down to just like, oh, there was a lucky moment here and an unlucky moment here. Like we both played the game correctly. We both made good choices. I think I just had enough of a structural advantage and I leveraged that, um in order to eke out the victory. But I it was a really fun event. It's not what I think is optimal. Like I do still think Thunder Lizards is probably our best build. Um, but I'm really reticent to give up summoning. I like summoning even more now than I
Right.
did in the other edition.
Again, damage goes down, summoning comes up. A lot of
Yeah.
the rule rule sets and abilities like healing isn't as terrible as it was. It's still not
Oh
great,
yeah,
but unless you build a massive heal one monster list.
yeah. Which
But
also like because of the meta shift has me looking at Fangs of Sotek again. Because there's not as much we have to hide from. Like you don't have to be in the heavens with two slants in order to play against KO. Like
mm,
KO got hit. Like for as much as people are complaining, legitimately, because we did get hit hard, about how hard Seraphon got hit, but it was also deserved, in my opinion. KO got it worse. Um,
yeah,
like
yeah,
the
mainly
only things we oh go ahead.
yeah, mainly the fact that their thunderers can't be taken in full units anymore. Uh, Everything in their book got massively expensive, which is what made them good when
Well,
their prices
and
dropped.
triumphs.
Yes, Triumph's got so much
Triumphs
different.
change. Yeah. That
But
change to triumphs hurt them so hard.
yeah, that said,
Um,
um, general command abilities help them a lot more than they
uh-huh.
used to. So it's a bit of a win lose there.
In terms of play, I found Dracothian's Tell requires a lot more thought now because you need to make sure that you're because they don't have alphas, right?
Hmm.
Like salamanders don't have alphas, they're just salamanders. Um, so you have to make sure that you're keeping your heroes in range for like your all out attack, all out defense, um, all of that. So that got a lot more interesting to play. So I like Dracothian's Tell more from that perspective. But because the table's smaller,
Hmm.
I feel like Fangs of Sotek, in most cases, will get my skink units where I want them to be anyways. Like that extra 3 inches of movement on salamanders, like moving 11 inches with a 12-inch range, that's going to get you in range of a lot of stuff you want to be shooting.
Right off the bat.
Having skink Starseers for those 3d6 charges, having skink Priest for their not prayer. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't think Dracothian's is nearly as crucial as it was.
Yep. I'm going to be honest. I've always used it because I'm not a meta player and it helps me in ways that it doesn't help anyone else. But yeah, Fangs
So
has
I
always been pretty solid and just showing it in
oh
different
for
ways
sure.
now.
For one of my favorite things about Dracothian's Tell was actually always the command trait. I love
Yes,
ancient knowledge.
yes.
Um,
It, its
so
its best feature was always it made a super slan.
yeah, so for having two slants for my more of my loadout for my list, I did ancient knowledge, obviously, and I gave him the God Beast pendant, and then my other slant I did Ichi Grubs, which is basically ancient knowledge.
Well, half of
Um,
ancient knowledge, yeah.
and so getting the reroll on each of them for those phases, and then having the one that I could be more careless with because there's a chance on a 4-up he comes back.
Hmm.
So that actually does more to disincentivize him being attacked than it does like there's a 50% chance he comes back. Um, like it's
Yeah,
just
a
normally a
lot of
lower
people just
priority to
won't
kill.
bother. He doesn't look
Yeah,
like Croak, and everyone's still very touchy about Croak, so they'll ignore normal slan.
yeah. And so I don't know. I think even in Fangs of Sotek, I might take double slan, even though there's way less value in it.
Hmm.
Um, but having two spells that you can give up and still having two level two wizards that are pretty much always going to be at a +2 to cast. Um,
And Dispel. A lot of Dispel is still important as always.
yeah, exactly. Like you want to have those six or more dispels against like Lumineth Realm Lords, Disciples of Zinj, Soulblight Grave Lords. Um, yeah, so I don't know. Even looking at like I could literally run the list I just ran as Fangs of Sotek, and I think I'd still find ways to get good value out of that allegiance ability set.
Fair enough. The
Um,
meta is still young. We're still learning everything.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, with how important secondaries are
Hmm.
nowadays, how did you find those in your big event? I know we were theorizing about them,
Yeah.
but how did they
So
handle practically?
I love the secondaries. For the event that we were running, we only were allowed to use the secondaries out of page 15 of the GHP.
Hmm.
So we couldn't use any of the ones from the core rulebook.
That's
Uh,
generally what I'm discovering everywhere. That people say stick to a single battle pack, not core and battle pack.
yep. So we could only run those. And I didn't have any monsters in my list. But pretty much everyone I played against had monsters. So I found that whatever bonus they could get, I could get a bonus by getting a kill against a monster.
Hmm.
So I don't feel like you need to have a monster to be scoring because on two of the three games I played, I scored max points.
Okay.
Um, for what we were allowed to score. They had like their own little algorithm where it was base 10, and then you would take whatever you scored in your round, and you would subtract your opponents from it, whatever they scored, and you divide that by two, and you were allowed to score a maximum of like 25 points or something. So you only had to beat your opponent by 30 points and you'd score maximum.
Okay.
And I did that for two of my games. So maybe in a different system, I would fill it a bit more. Um, but like on the Star Strike one, I think I ended up scoring like 51 points on that battle.
Granted, that
Um,
is a
it's a high
major.
scoring battle.
It's
Yeah,
a high scoring, majorly about control, and we're a control army, and you were fighting a straight up fighter army that you
exactly.
managed
Yeah.
to table.
And then against the zigzag one against Soul Blight, I ended up getting max points because I basically did a bait and switch through redeploy by like teleporting and stuff,
Hmm.
and did a huge refused flank where he committed a lot of stuff.
That's actually
Um,
exactly what I did on that map as well.
yeah, yeah. Um, and I ended up getting max points out of it by the end because I was able to just sort of surgically pick him apart by having overwhelming force against small units. Um, but I never felt like there were some battle rounds where I missed out on like 1 point because there wasn't a monster left to kill and I didn't have one to get bonuses.
Hmm.
And even though there's that spell, the metamorphosis, I think it's called,
Yes.
um, a lot of them make you have to declare a monster for a lot of them before
Okay.
you've had a hero phase.
Oh,
Um,
so it wouldn't even come up.
so it didn't necessarily help. Um, but I don't know, again, at least in my other games, like it feels like it breaks even because for this battle pack, you just get a victory point a round if you killed a monster in the round. It broke even with my opponents having monsters to get extra points on their battle tactics.
Yep.
Now, if you could not kill them, that would be very different. Um, but at least for me, I really like the battle tactics. I'm
Any
looking
of them
forward
that's
to being. Oh, go ahead.
any of them that stick out as ones that we need to focus on primarily? I know you were
Um,
liking Take Center.
so you can't do that anymore because that's a core rulebook one.
Yep.
Yep. So ferocious advance, monstrous. Nope, not monstrous takeover. Where is it? Aggressive expansion. Um, conqueror, broken ranks. Those ones I did pretty much every battle. Uh, and then slay the warlord is shockingly easy for us to do, at least with the list I was running. Same for bring it down if they had a monster.
Yeah, I
Um,
some people seem to think Bring It Down's not worth the time because it is harder to kill monsters than it used to be, but four salamanders are still four salamanders.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, yeah, it's harder to kill monsters, but like I did it every time I declared it. Like I never declared it and failed it.
Right,
And it was
you have to
always
think
worth it.
about it, but it's not like you're just never going to attack monsters.
Yep. Broken ranks is also super easy. What I found is I actually like to suicide um my battle line early if they haven't yet taken broken ranks
Hmm.
to deny it. Because of the list I was running, like if they're going after my slan, my SARS guard are gonna be dead. And then I can suicide my skinks, and now they can't do broken ranks.
Granted, that doesn't work
Um,
for everyone. You don't want to do that if you're
correct,
running
correct.
stegodons.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, but I don't know. I like it. There's a lot of counterplay
Hmm.
in terms of how you choose to play. If there's more mental bookkeeping, right? Like you have to keep track
Right.
of what's still accomplishable for you and for
Which
your opponent,
which
and
is
there's
what
a
I
lot you
missed.
can do.
Yeah, which is
Hmm.
what I missed about our first edition book that disappeared in our second one, and I'm glad it's
Yeah,
back.
yeah. So I love the battle tactics. I found that they added a lot of depth. I'm I'm looking. So I just have a good memory. I'm lucky with that. I can read something. I got it. So I found it a little bit frustrating waiting 5 minutes at the start of each of my opponent's round for them to figure out what they were picking.
Hmm.
That's just my own little pet peeve. But I'm going to be really excited in like 6 months when The
Everyone knows
community's
what
at
they're
a
doing.
place where they don't have to read through all of them. They just have to think, which one do I want to try and do this time?
Yeah,
Um,
I've had a opponent completely forget to do secondaries several times in a game.
so this was the very first event of third for like most of the play community that I was with.
Mm-hmm.
So we had longer rounds than normal, but I don't think I ended up needing the time on pretty much any of those games.
Right.
Um, except the last one. Um, but that was because like we took little breaks and shit. Like he's my best friend. Like we could have played it quicker. We just didn't. Um,
You were there to have fun, and taking your
uh,
time is part of that.
yeah, exactly. Um, but I did find that it kind of interrupted the flow of the game a little bit. Where you're like, okay, normally you had like a minute or around that if you win the roll off to be like, who am I giving turn? Um, Sometimes it didn't always matter, but sometimes you'd take like a minute to think about it.
Hmm.
Um, and then after that, once they take it, if they wrongly didn't consider what their battle tactic was going to be before they decided that, now they have to think about their battle tactic. So I found it interrupted the flow of the game a little bit, but I think that will go away.
Right. It's an experience thing. It's
Yeah, exactly.
everyone's new. It's a brand new concept to AOS in general. It's
Yeah.
something you everyone will memorize, but
Hmm.
it'll take a bit.
And I like it. Between comparing it to like the 40K system and this, I like this a lot more. I like everyone working off the same list
Mm,
because it allows playmaking and counterplay.
right.
Um,
Granted, I like it
I
much
like
better in
that.
the General's Handbook than I do the core rulebook because the core rulebook ones are boring.
Yeah, they are a bit boring. Um, but these ones are all pretty similar. It's just now if you're a monster, do an extra thing. Um,
I mean,
which like
it
anytime you can
doesn't take
increase the
much
specificity.
much to make something more interesting
Yeah,
than
exactly. Yeah.
kill a unit,
Increasing the
kill a unit over here, kill a unit over there, kill a
Yep,
unit that's a specific type of unit.
yep.
Granted, this
So
has a
I
lot of
liked
that,
it.
but still.
Um, Conqueror, super easy to do. The only game I didn't do Conqueror was in my first game because he never got control of an objective because it was that Star Strike one.
Yep. I
Um,
Yeah, the only time I've encountered Conqueror so far is when I denied my opponent it because he wasn't thinking and managed to
mm,
get the unit taking it killed.
mm.
But yeah, the one that I've actually found is super useful for Seraphon, at least with Starborn, is Spearhead.
Yes.
The one where you can just pop 2 units into the backfield.
Yeah, I do that turn one a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Provided you can run the one, but yeah.
Well, no, so what I frequently did is I would Lords of Space and Time something and Chameleon Skink something.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Um,
I.
it- Super easy.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever turn I was planning on Chameleon Skinking, that's normally when I would do Savage Spearhead. Um,
We've got
yeah.
so much mobility that it's a really easy one to pull off whenever you need to.
Hmm.
Which, yeah, it's always good to have one or two in your back pocket in case the table just doesn't shape up for you.
Yeah. The one that's difficult is aggressive expansion. Um, there's a lot of battle plans that do not have two objectives that
Mm-hmm.
are not wholly within your territory. Um, like I don't know how they're going to define wholly within your territory
I think
because it
if
doesn't have a measurement. It's a point. So if it's in your territory, it's all the way in your territory. There's not like a split.
in general, I
Um,
think that any of the ones that are on the line are not going to count, and anything that is
which
cornered
is weird because
qualifies.
technically that's a Venn diagram. Like it's both wholly
Right.
within mind and wholly within theirs. But
Just
I think a lot of those aren't going to count.
mm,
Um,
yeah, in general, based on what GW has done before, I think that's what they mean. They just have not thought about it to the extent that is necessary for pedantic people like you and me.
well, I mean, I don't know. Like, there's no objective that's partway in mine, partway in yours. Like, it's just it can be in both, but that's because we have territory overlap,
Hmm.
um, where they touch. But yeah, so that one I pretty much never got to use. Um, I think I did that one on Star Strike because there was the middle in my opponents, and I was able to do it. And that's the only time I got to do it.
Yeah, let's
Um,
see. Just looking through it, there's one, two, three, four, five out of the battle plans. Oh, six. But most of these require you to take your entire opponent's backfield to do so,
Yes, yeah.
which is
Um,
which isn't as easy as it once was.
well, and I like it, but there's a lot of three objective battle plans.
Yeah,
Um,
uh, especially with everything becoming less deadly, that's become an option now, so
yeah,
that it's not just a grind in the middle, and it
yeah,
helps some of the armies that got hurt really bad, like KO and Fire Slayers, who really
mhm,
couldn't project onto those 6 and 8 point battle plans.
yes. And it makes Sons of Behemoth that much better.
Yes, I don't think Sons of Behemoth were built with third in mind, but I'm glad they finally came back into their own.
I don't know. I think they probably were, but maybe I'm just giving GW too much credit.
Yeah, possibly. I think that books that came after them weren't built with third in mind, and so I wouldn't give them credit for
Soulblight
that.
Gravelord was the only one that came after Sons, right? Well, I guess Lumineth
Slanesh.
2.0. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Slanesh is.
Slanesh is the
They
big
were
thumb in the
fine. They
pie.
just needed to not have a point increase. Like, if Slanesh had just kept all their points from 2.0
It would have made
for third
sense, right?
edition,
Everyone
they would
thought
have
they
been
were
fine.
built for third edition, and then they
Yes.
went up again. It's like someone forgot
Which, honestly, that might be the case.
that
That I wouldn't put past
that
GW.
someone forgot they already pointed them correctly.
Yeah, and so they just did the standard 12% increase that like everything got.
Oh man, the thing is, they made Slangers more expensive, so I don't think they. I can't give them any credit.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for third edition. I still think Thunder Lizards is probably going to be the most competitive way to go. Um, but I think I'm probably going to be running dual slan even in Thunder Lizards, even without getting um, access to summoning points. Like having six unbinds at +2, really important for this
Mm-hmm.
meta.
Fair enough. Well, we've also got several questions from
Uh-huh.
our audience. There's a lot to know, and they've a few of the things we said last week piqued their interest. One that's a general rules one that I've seen everywhere that we'll address, and generally we have an interesting case in our Stegodons who are most of the time behemoths, but sometimes battle line.
Yes.
They only count as one, guys. If you are in Thunder Lizards, they are no longer behemoths. They do not count towards towards the behemoth battalions.
Yes.
Granted, they're now troops, and having Stegodons being hunters of the Heartlands is hilarious. But
Yes. 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 Uh,
like,
and it means you can still do one drop if you want to do battle regiment.
mm-hmm. But yeah.
Um,
So no, they don't count as both. One or
yeah,
the
they're
other,
one or the other.
based on what subfaction you're a part of.
Yep.
Another one is Bomb Squig. It was really interested in your Chair Force One list last week.
Oh,
He managed to put it together, and he wants to
nice.
know if there's any tips for beginners who want to try out this list.
Yeah, get D6 summoning points and summon salamanders and throw a bunch of spells. Like it's not crazy complicated to play. Like now that we just get our Realm Shaper engine,
Mm-hmm.
Chair Force 1 is so much better.
Right.
It's still not optimal, but just knowing you get the Realm Shaper engine, like center the Realm Shaper engine towards your territory. Put your two regular slams in an Astroloth inside with like 5 Sarsguard or 10 Sarsguard if you want. Keep Croak close enough by to get buffs. Uh, Soak up some table with your skinks. Hold back your Troglodon so that you can send your Troglodon in order to vector for Celestial Deliverance.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no strict direct follow steps 1 through 5 to be successful. It's a very fluid
There very
list,
rarely
but
is.
most of its strength comes down to the amount of summoning that it has. Like you can easily summon 20 skinks a turn with that list. Um, and for the current meta, that's a lot of control. and you have a lot of offensive spell power, and you're probably going to stop most of your opponent's spells.
which is still
Like against
super
Lumineth,
good.
yeah, yeah. Like against Lumineth, you don't have to think. You're just like, oh, you're casting it. I'll try and stop it. Like there's no,
There's
ooh,
no
I'll let that one go. Like you don't have to. They've
yeah.
got like 8 spells, and you've got like 11 unbox. Um, yeah. So in that sense, there's somewhat more mindlessness to it, or you don't have to be as mindful.
Right.
Uh,
No mind games in
but
the.
summon.
Yep.
Yep.
Summoning is the main way staying power for that list. The
Yeah.
rest is
And
throwing
it
around endless spells and having fun.
Yep. And you are gonna have to split up your slants. Like you need more board presence. Um, you're gonna have to split stuff up after you deploy. And understanding how to control the table and move and stuff is all very important. Having your correct vectors to summon around by moving your slants and stuff, very important. Um, but it's mostly just summoning the right thing at the right time and making sure the right slan casts the right spells. Like one of them always wants to cast Celestial Equilibrium. There's so much value for this list out of getting +1 to all your casters, except the one who cast it, which means that one isn't the one you want to try to cast Comet's Call with. You want to cast a lower importance spell that you still want to get off, like maybe one of your endless spells that isn't super hard to get off, like Geminids or Swords.
Hmm.
Um, like just it's keeping control and doing the right spell on the right target. Um, and that's pretty much it. Like and remembering that Croak now knows all the spells from his lore. So you
Yes.
should be taking like Mist or Levitate. I mean, Flaming Weapon, if you're planning on sending Croak into a horde, is sort of a sleeper. They're not going to be ready for that. Like you send Croak into 60 zombies and you
I
can end
mean,
up with like
who is ready for
30.
getting a zombie frog to the face?
Exactly. Yeah. Like you could be looking at 32 damage attacks if you get off flaming weapon on Croak and send them into zombies. Um, so like there's a lot of nuance to it, but at the same time, it's very direct. Like because it's so bland and direct, it means your decisions are really important.
Mm,
Like I don't think it's an easy list to play. I think it's better than like it's easily a B tier list. Um, but it's not something that I would take to a GT and expect to go 5-0.
right.
Um,
And like anything else, when you settle on a list, practice with it. Practice with it for many games
mhm.
because you will you will get better with a list regardless of what it is, provided you put the time into it. And
And
I
you'll learn to see things you didn't even know were options.
mm-hmm. And I've beaten much better lists than mine just because I know mine so well and my opponent didn't.
Yeah.
All right. Blair Jameson asks, "What are our thoughts on the Underworld Warband being in the meta in third?"
Uh, it won't be.
It won't. No, it's just as bad as it always was. It's it's unfortunate, but oh, good lord.
So the problem is it takes up 2 leader slots.
Yeah.
Um, like all things aside, it's not the pointing that is the issue. The pointing's a problem. It's over pointing.
Mm-hmm.
But the main problem is it takes up 2 leader slots in an army that wants to use normally all 6 leader slots.
Yes, and on top of that, those leaders are less useful than their generic versions.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm. And last one, do we have any thoughts on if Coatl's Claw can be used in third, and if so, how would we go about doing it?
Yeah, Koala's Claw's still good. There's still negatives to hit, so there's still benefit to buffing. Also, its command trait is really good. Every time you issue a command from that general on a 4-up, get a CP,
Mm.
that's still really strong. There's so many good command abilities to use that with. I think Knights are my preferred platform over Warriors now.
Granted,
Um,
that's always been the case. I've always been a weirdo.
so I liked Warriors before because they really benefited from like double stacking things. Like you put Scar Veteran, you put Old Blood, um, and then you get the extra +1 and you charge. Like getting
Mm-hmm.
all 3 of those things interacted through command abilities was great. But now you only get one of those through a command ability. Um,
Uh,
so that is the bigger nerf to Kawado's Claw, other than the pluses
right.
not stacking as much.
That's what we've been saying since day one.
Yeah. But that being said, like for knights, you can still get like exploding sixes and you can still end up at +2 to hit. Even if that's only functionally +1 to hit, like what their damage is pretty consistent with what a lot of damage is in the game now.
Mm.
Um, like I think
Everything
Koato's
else's
Claw is still
ceilings went
viable.
down, and Knights didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. And I like as a result, I think they're just better than Warriors now. Like using
I still
like
th-
a 40-man block of Warriors with spears and serpent staff and all those buffs to me was better than building a Knight Hammer. But now I think min-sized units of Knights is way better than any amount of Warriors
Oy, I think
in
Warriors
terms of
are
efficiency.
just our best anvil now. They can become impossibly durable, and
Yeah,
they've got the bodies to actually make impossible durability work.
yeah, yeah.
But you're
Especially
right.
like you
It's
take Emerald Life Swarm, that gets a
mm,
shitload of value on Saurus Warriors
true. I prefer
and
just to
Rally.
not let the damage get to that point.
Yeah, that's fair. Like,
I, I, I
uh,
I've always thought in any system that has quote unquote balanced healing, that
yeah.
prevention is always better than healing.
Oh,
It
for
it
sure.
always
Yeah.
has been. And you like your spell slots. And Emerald Life Swarm, especially with the fact that it costs points, I've always had trouble making it work with my lists when I can just drop -1 to be hit and prevent more damage than Life Swarm was ever going to heal.
Yeah, no, no, and that's great, but it's not an either or. It can be an and.
Granted,
Um, so that's what I like about Emerald Life Swarm. Like picking a unit within an inch, killing D3 wounds, or bringing back D3 slain models. Um, like that's pretty solid on
in
Saurus
general,
Warriors.
yep.
Um, like
In
bringing back two warriors. Like if they're only eking through 5 damage under your warriors a turn, like canceling out over half of that or up to half of that, that's pretty great. Like
mm,
I'll take it.
yep, it does work well with the actual anvil we now have, which is
Yeah.
so weird because we were so glass cannony before, but
Yes.
now that we've gotten cities as an ally, which is the big part about it, and that damage has gotten down, we can actually field a durable unit, which is so
Yeah.
weird.
Hmm.
Yeah, but knights is definitely the go-to because they've always been minimum size units. They don't suffer from that.
Yep.
They're
But
fives,
I
so coherency they don't
in
care. And
yeah,
yeah,
Scar Veteran Carnosaurs got proportionately better.
mm-hmm.
Um, and Carnosaurs are fine, but honestly, I kind of still like just the regular old Scar Veteran on Cold One more and not running a Carnosaur in Kotal's Claw.
Really, are
Like,
you the
they're
enemy of
fine.
fun?
No, well, if I'm just talking about like what I think is going to be more
Granted,
winning,
I'm being facetious.
yeah, like I don't know. I still don't prefer Carnosaur.
I mean,
Like in any case, I'd rather spend the points on a Carnosaur on some type of Stegodon.
mm, I'm afraid Lizard's gonna hate hearing you say that, but
I know.
yeah,
And Carnosaurs are cool. I still play with them.
mhm.
I just don't think they're
They're usable
worth
now,
more than a
which they
Stegodon.
never were. They always had the problem of big, not durable monster, and now that's
Yeah.
not a thing. So you can
Yep.
use them, which I wouldn't have ever suggested doing in second edition, but
My main issue with the Carnosaur is how swingy they are. Like, did your jaws work? Awesome. You dealt like a decent amount of damage. Did your jaws not work? Cool, you dealt 1 damage.
yet
Um,
it's weird. All of my graphs on them, instead of being the general bell curve, were this jagged saw blade because it was so dependent on that 5 damage
yeah,
bites.
yeah. So I don't know. Like, instead of having like those big bites, having the Stegodons where it's like, here's a bunch of different 2 damage attacks. Um, I just like that more.
Mm.
Like to me, it's just better.
That and Foot Scarvet has always been a lot more durable than the monster version. He has a better
Yeah,
save.
and
He has Lookout Sir. He's just well, not as fast, but he doesn't need to be.
I don't know. Like I think like when I think through them, Scar Veteran is worth basically paying double points for the Carnosaur. But I'd rather instead save those points and put them towards a different behemoth like a Stegodon.
Hmm.
Like even in Coatl's Claw, I'd rather a Stegodon than a Carnosaur.
They have gotten better, but they're still the best.
Yep. And definitely Scar Veteran is the Carnosaur that I would be going with. Like I don't really see a reason to take Old Blood anymore.
There's a difference of 2 damage on average. There's no reason.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah, I don't want to pay, what is it, like 50 more points?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sad. But yeah, if anybody else has questions, we're willing to answer them. But that was the general ones we got from our last episode. We let's see.
The actual meat we were planning, the endless spells.
It's not so much meat as it is. It was always a smaller sub.
That's true. That's true.
It's a smaller thing. We've got a lot of endless spells just aren't worth taking anymore. Their points got blown up to an outrageous amount, especially because they became a lot less useful. Like, I'm really hurt that Lunchbox isn't good anymore. It
Mm.
really isn't, and they made
So
it more expensive. Moving a wizard around, at least for us, isn't worth
so
paying.
in terms of spells that were not good and are now good, what's your favorite? And then the
Uh,
opposite, in terms of spells that were good and now aren't, what makes you the most sad?
Suffocating Gravetide was only ever good because it had a big footprint. Now it's
Yeah.
probably the most dangerous spell in this,
Hmm.
and looks because it moves pretty much as fast as everything else. It has the massive base, so it's good at tagging more than one unit, and it's a
Hmm.
horde breaker, which
Hmm.
even on 10-man units does on average two damage,
Yeah.
which is the D3 that everything else is working with,
Yep.
and can spike much higher.
Yeah. I think Gravetide is the hardest to use because of its big footprint.
Hmm.
Um, like it's harder to squiggle around units and find a place to put it down. Um,
Granted, but
but I
even
like it.
if it's just the big fat deterrent in the middle of the board that if you approach it
Mhm.
you die.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, it's good. I like it. So what's the one that you used to love and now you don't, and that makes you sad?
Yeah, Luncheon the Soul Seeker. Mostly because I used to use it in cities over bridge because it was
Mm.
cheaper, and all I
Hmm.
needed to do was throw Iron Drakes across the board once, and losing a model didn't hurt them. And instead of teleporting, actually, all the teleporting ones got significantly worse, but this one now can only teleport a wizard. One wizard
Yeah.
dude, which. No, no, that's not. No. The
Yeah.
wizards on monsters are already don't need it. They're moving fast enough to ignore it. And foot wizards aren't going to be. That doubles the price of foot wizards.
Hmm. So I definitely should have thought about the question before I asked it, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So the one that I used to not be a big fan of, but now really like is Quicksilver swords.
Really?
Um,
I hadn't even considered them.
so what they do now is they're set up within six, they move eight. So they got a little less fast. After it's moved, the person using control picks a unit that it moved across. You roll 12 dice. For each six, they take a mortal wound. Here's the thing though, ward saves cannot work against those mortal wounds.
Mm.
Uh
So the pendant
that's
isn't a thing.
yeah, and whatever other thing you have, like your faction ward, whatever. Um, just being able to stick two damage to something, uh, I like that a lot. Granted, it's expensive. I want to say it's like 80 or 90 points. Um,
Yeah, here, let me grab.
but I like it. And I like that a lot more than its old thing where it used to be like,
Racist swords? Yes, it's 90 points. Good lord. No.
yeah,
No. I get what you're saying, but no, that's not worth 100 points.
well, it's because like it's so it's not good against everything, but what it's good against, like hitting the targets you want to hit with it, like I don't know, go trick. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like the fact that it ignores those other damages, I like that. Um, I think in most of your list against most armies, you'll be better off not taking it. But it's only like 1.5 damage less around than your average 100 point spent. Um, so I don't know. I like Quicksilver Swords a lot. Before I only took it because it used to be like 20 points.
Right. It
Um,
was cheap as dirt, and it did
yeah.
okay for being cheap as dirt.
The spell that I'm sad about that I used to really like, but now probably won't ever run is Prismatic Palisade.
Yeah, that's the one I was looking at it too. If I wasn't going the I loved it in cities. Yeah, it's not useless, but
No, it's fine.
it's expensive and it doesn't do a whole lot.
I just feel like a lot of the time I can get the same effect out of the generic realm spell that lets you turn a terrain piece into line of sight blocking.
And it doesn't cost 40 points.
It doesn't cost 40 points. I don't get to choose where it goes. That's fair. But it's only a 6-inch range setup. Um, and it's no longer a wall. Like, I want my wall to be a wall. That's the main reason I took it.
Right.
The fact that it isn't a wall, I don't, I'm probably never going to bring it.
In general, for
Uh,
people who don't know, you can now walk over endless spells, which you didn't used to be able to do.
yeah.
Which,
A side one, my second choice for endless spells that I used to never take, but now would, and this one's going to be controversial too. I like the new Malevolent Maelstrom. I
really,
think in like half your games, it's going to be pretty much worthless. But where it's going to be
that's
really
generally
good is
why I don't
against
like it.
like, yeah, yeah, but where it helps you is the ones you want the help against. Lumineth Realm Lords, Soulblight Grave Lords, Disciples of Siege. Um, like those are the ones that I want that type of a spell against. And it's still cheap. Um, so yeah, I actually like Malevolent Maelstrom now. I would totally run it, especially if I'm in a meta that's saturated by like Lumineth Realm Lords. Um, yep,
Fair enough. It's more a meta reaction than because it's good.
exactly.
Yep. Um, there are the endless spells that deny command abilities,
Yes.
primarily Horgast and unfortunately Geminids, which we discovered after last episode isn't as
Yeah.
good as we thought it was because it
Yeah, until the
ends
next combat
at the
phase.
start of next combat phase, so it doesn't deny combat phase command abilities, which so close to being still being really good, and now it's not bad, but I don't plan to take it very often.
So there's still a lot of really good hero phase command
Yep, it
abilities.
denies Unleash Hell, it denies Reposition, it denies hero abilities, it denies All Out Run,
Yeah.
and shooting +1 to shooting. So it's
Yep.
not useless, but the main reason I wanted to take it, it isn't a thing that exists.
Well, and the other thing that I like is that there's still a lot of army specific hero command abilities. Like
Yes.
you hit fucking Archeon in a Wrath of the Everchosen list so that he can't use his foresight.
Yeah.
You hit a Harbinger of Decay, so he can't give that 5-up save after save for his ward.
Hmm.
Um, there's still a lot of meta prevalent units that Geminids does good work against. Um, but it's something that requires a lot more knowledge to effectively use
Right. You're going to have to
than
memorize all the
take
ward
D3
spells.
mortal wounds, your -1 attack, take D3 mortal wounds, your -1 to hit. Not like you didn't have to know what you were doing to get value out of it.
Hmm. Uh, yeah, that covers all the standout endless spells. Umbral Spell Portal is still Umbral Spell Portal. Shackles is still
Yep.
good, if not a bit hard to use.
Mm-hmm.
And a whole bunch of them are just, why would I ever consider taking it?
Horror gas to me is like bring it. Um,
Yeah,
like it's
it's
really good now.
it's cheap. It's up there with the highest damage dealers in the endless spells, and being
Yep.
able to deny Battle Shock and force Battle Shock is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Um, so I really like that. Chromatic cogs, if you have more than one wizard, definitely consider chromatic cogs. Um,
Yeah, but only if you have more than one wizard.
yeah, like I'm really sad about the loss of flexibility of being able to give +2 to run and charge if you want. Like it's pretty much no longer flexible anymore. Like I wouldn't bring it ever for the purpose of speeding up time. I would bring it because I plan to slow down time.
Hmm.
Like this in Lumineth Realm Lords is disgusting.
Yeah.
Um,
Granted, they lost their twin stones being any good, so fair is
I
fair.
mean, twin stones are still good. They're just not like you don't have it, you built your list wrong.
Hmm.
Um,
That's
yeah,
actually that's actually a good point. A lot of the things that got worse, well, half the things that got worse are not so much bad as no longer auto includes, which fair
yeah,
enough. I just wish that the things that I enjoyed didn't become absolutely pathetic.
that's fair. The other spell that I see get pooped on a lot that I think is unjustifiable is the Burning Head. A lot of people dislike that it automatically is removed from play at the end.
Hmm.
I really like that because a lot of
Well,
times
yeah,
I would
that's
have to
because you were
dispel my
already
own
gonna
endless
just
spell.
pay cast it again.
Exactly. So now it does it for me. So I actually really like the Burning Head.
For
Like if
most
I'm just
people, I would
looking,
just use the faction D3 damage spell. Like this
sure,
doesn't
but
apply
now
to
I can
Seraphon,
also do this.
I
Uh,
guess, but most people don't have enough spell slots to also do an endless spell and pay for it.
oh yeah, yeah. Like if you're not running a bunch of wizards, like in a dual sland list, I would always consider bringing the Burning Head.
Right. For
Um,
Seraphon, who don't have the option of a
yeah,
D3 do damage spell, it's
yep,
worth it. For a
yep,
lot of armies that do have the cast a spell do D3 damage and usually do D3 damage to more than one unit, this isn't worth taking.
yeah,
Yeah, probably why I'm so harsh on it is because I run cities and this is a nothing in cities.
yeah. Because it used to give that +1 to hit.
Yeah, but even then, like so much in cities does good damage that you'd never consider casting Burning Head.
That's fine. I can respect that.
Yeah, and that's probably why I ignore it more than it deserves.
Yeah. For other armies, some of the spells to watch out for though are the new crows for Beast of Chaos.
Yep.
Um, like those got significantly better, like actually dispel them.
Yeah,
Uh,
not just ignore them and wonder why
exactly.
they split
Like
points.
before, it was just a mini game. Like your Beast of Chaos opponent was like, okay, I'm gonna lose anyways. So let's play kickball with my crows. Um, now they're actually good. Um, so it goes off on a 5, has a setup range of 12, and they have to be within 3 inches of each other. Um, Models cannot issue Inspiring Presence or Rally while they're within 12 inches of any of the models from that spell.
Which is
Um,
insane.
yeah. And then you still get to kick them. Like you can still do that. If you move within an inch of them, you get to, now they're
Granted,
just removed.
you're still fighting
Um,
Beasts of Chaos, so you don't really
yeah,
have to
exactly.
worry. But
Yeah.
they have some
Uh,
interesting tools now, and best score are actually fairly competitive now that everything else got weaker.
yep. Yep. But yeah, like that and like all the Daughters of Cain spells. Get rid of the Daughters of Cain.
Yep, they're
Um,
all really fun.
yep.
I
All the Zinch spells, all the Slaves to Darkness spells. You still want to get rid of them.
Yeah, because Maelstrom, Hell Portal is still
Hell Rift, yeah,
what it used to be, and what it used to be was bonkers, and now it moves twice.
yeah, yep. So it's real good. Which makes me it's so good against Lumineth Realm Lords. That's the main reason I like that spell.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. Um, but yeah, endless spells. I like the changes overall. I feel like there's actually choices to be made now. Like Soul Snare Shackles, absolutely amazing. No reason to take it if you don't have a frontline wizard. You'll never get value out of it.
Right, because
But if
it's
you have a
so
frontline
short
wizard,
range.
it's fantastic. Um,
Granted,
like
anyone
there's
can have a front lane wizard now. Tome is a thing.
oh yeah, yeah, if you want to, absolutely. And some of the Thunder Lizard lists that I'm playing around with, like it's Arcane Tome on an Engine of the Gods. So that's a perfect reason to bring Snare Shackles. Like the amount of table control you can get out of doing that is pretty remarkable. Um, like there's a lot of really good choices to be made now, but now they are choices. Like if you're going for Horde Breaker units or Horde Breaker tactics, using a Horror Ghast, no brainer. Like if you're planning on Stellar Tempesting blocks of anything, you should consider bringing a horror ghast to set up near it. Like you'll get
Mm,
so much more value out of that horde breaker now. Um,
yeah, because the thing immunity from battle shock isn't the doom it used to be, but it's still there, and this
uh-huh.
helps a lot with that. Specifically with things like Skaven. Not that you need a whole lot of help with Skaven, but
Yeah.
because that bell,
Well,
the bloody
and
bell's still a thing.
the the rule where you used to get one extra bravery per 10 models is gone. It's not in this
Yep.
edition.
Which
You're
means
just
it's essentially -2 or -3 to a lot of people's bravery.
yeah. So like bravery mechanics got a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Like using a purple sun and having a horror ghast near that same unit, like that's a pretty potent combo. Um,
Yep,
like
and you're
there's
going to be
there's a
forcing
lot of
people
cool.
to do their best to unbind your spells.
Yeah. So there's actually some really deep, interesting choices to be made. Um, Even though they don't act as walls, considering base size is still super important because things can't land on it. And there's so many more behemoths now. So like if you want to soak up the ability for a behemoth to get in combat with you, you can still do that with like Ravenous Gnashing Jaws and Soul Tide. Um, like there's still lots you can do by the base size of the endless spell.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think a lot of people just kind of wrote that interaction off because you can now move through them.
Well, yeah, because a lot of things are fast enough to ignore it, but remember, Kragnos is still fat.
Yeah, well, and like other behemoths are still fat. Like Teclis is still a fat boy.
Mm.
Like Marathi, like there's other behemoths that are common in the meta.
And if worse
Um,
comes to worse, you can plonk it down immediately in front of your guys so they can't be charged.
exactly, because there's not room. Like there's the fact that they have big bases still matters.
Yeah.
Um,
Another reason why I really like Gravetide.
uh-huh,
It's a
yeah.
double don't charge me, I dare you.
Hmm. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, so I like the new endless spells. I think they did good things. There's not any that I look at for the most part and think I would never use. It's normally, well, I don't see the situation coming up in my list versus this is worthless.
There are a few that I think are absolutely never worth taking, but I don't think they're worth mentioning.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, yeah, some of these they other endless spells do it better and usually for cheaper, so why bother? There's still redundancy here, but
That's
they
true.
a lot of the ones that you would never consider have gotten better, and a lot like the fat middle has gotten bigger,
Hmm.
and I am planning to use more than just one endless spell now, like Geminids isn't the only option, which is a big bonus
I'm so sad about Bellwind Vortex.
about it just being gone now.
Yeah, and not just because I own three of them. I just really
3.
like.
Good lord, man.
So I had one that I painted up to just use for all my armies. And then I themed one to Seraphon.
Mhm.
And then I was working on building my own custom one with like an Aztec sundial on it
Oh, okay.
that I haven't finished and probably won't.
Yeah, I'm probably going to use mine for kit bashing parts for Croak.
Oh, nice. I like it.
Yeah, because he's this as nifty as his thing is, I want more magic basing to it.
Hmm.
Plus, yeah, I think it's the only way to get it on top of that snake. And I like that snake, but I'm probably not going to run daughters anytime soon.
Hmm. Well, and you can just buy another one.
Mhm.
Like if you really have to, you can get a snake online.
Yeah, that seems to cover everything we wanted to do today. It took 3 whole topics to get to our normal length. Hmm. Is there anything else you want to touch on, Wizard?
No, that's everything I had.
Alrighty. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your questions. Feel free to ask more. We're always willing to help you guys out. And
Yeah, thank you.
and you all have
It's
a
been fun as
wonderful
always.
day.
Likewise, yeah.